Even in today's SUV-dominated market, the 3 Series sedan and wagon remains BMW's bread and butter. And this new generation model, codenamed the G20, has impressed pretty much everyone who's set foot in it so far. With its more handsome exterior design, its more upmarket, luxurious and better built interior, and the retention of those familiar, brilliant driving dynamics that have always made this car something special. The whole point of these range reviews is to take a more in-depth look at a singular product lineup. Perhaps you've decided the 3 Series is the next car for you, but you're not really sure which one you should buy. So here we've assembled the 320i entry point, the faster and better equipped but more expensive 330i, which is the historical top seller, the low emissions 330e plug-in hybrid, and the M340i xDrive performance flagship, which tops the range until the new generation M3 arrives somewhere down the track.
The new 3 Series is a clean sheet redesign based on the company's rear-wheel drive CLAR platform found under the X3 and the 5 Series. It's bigger in every area than before, and the monocoque is 50% stiffer. Moreover, greater use of aluminium means that it's also 55 kilos lighter. Like the VW Golf or Porsche 911, BMW chooses evolution, not revolution, when it comes to penning a new 3 Series, though this one sports bolder contours along its side, an enlarged one-piece kidney grille flanked by LED headlights, and a new take on the classic Hofmeister kink. The more spacious interior has a cleaner layout than before and uses nicer materials. The slick new 10.25-inch centre screen can be operated by the signature iDrive dial, by direct touch, wheel buttons, or conversational voice control activated by a "Hey BMW" command.
The entry point to the range is the 320i at $64,900 before on-road costs. Under the bonnet is a 2-litre twin-powered turbo petrol engine with 135 kilowatts of power and 300 newton meters of torque. It's matched to an 8-speed automatic transmission as standard, and being a 3 Series, of course, it's rear-wheel drive. Now, the company claims a 0 to 100 sprint time of 7.1 seconds, which is pretty reasonable for a base car, and fuel economy of just 6.3 litres every 100 k's on the combined cycle. The days of base 3 Series models being stripped out specials are no longer. This car comes as standard with a 12.3-inch digital instrument display, projecting head-up display on the windscreen, large screen here with sat-nav and wireless Apple CarPlay. You've also got a wireless phone charging pad down here, a built-in SIM card, LED headlights at the front, and of course the full suite of driver assistance aids like lane departure alert, blind spot monitoring and autonomous emergency braking. Of course, being a luxury car, we've got some optional extras fitted to this test car, including these leather seats and that sunroof.
Just on a quick side note, for a brief window of time there was a $3,000 more expensive 320d diesel model with 140 kilowatts and a potent 400 newton meters, with fuel use of only 4.5 litres every 100 kilometres. But reflecting dwindling diesel demand for passenger cars, it's been deleted from dealer lots already.
Sitting in the middle of the range is the 330i, which costs $70,900 before on-road costs, or $6,000 more than the 320i. And for that reasonable price impost, you get a fair bit extra, not least the uprated 2-litre twin-power engine with 190 kilowatts and 400 newton meters of torque. Now that slashes the 0 to 100 time to 5.8 seconds, while fuel use is barely affected, with the official claim being 6.4 litres every 100 k's.
You also get extras over the 320i, including 19-inch alloy wheels, a proximity sensing key fob, real leather seats, M Sport brakes, and an expanded range of active safety features including active cruise control and a surround view camera.
It also comes with M Sport adaptive dampers, which means by pressing the buttons down here, you can change the way the car rides. So in comfort mode, it's nice and soft and pliant for daily driving, and in sport mode, it gets stiffer and more aggressive for dynamic driving. Now, it is worth noting that the passive lift-related dampers fitted as standard to the 320i are really clever and unique, and I detail them in full in the written part of this review, so go check that out. And while they're relatively good and that car's hardly uncomfortable and jarring, this car is better because you can change its personality fundamentally at the push of a button. And what's not to like about that? Now, one thing any 3 Series really needs to do is drive dynamically. You really want to be able to just carve up corners in any 3 Series worth its salt. This car absolutely delivers on that. The chassis is really well balanced. It's really stiff, so you get good cornering agility. It tucks into corners beautifully. The body stays nice and flat against cornering forces, so good handling. The steering is well weighted. It feels really cohesive and everything sort of works with everything else in that classic BMW way, so a big tick there. The engine, well, obviously it doesn't have that sonorous, beautiful, gruff-sounding 6-cylinder engine in the 340i that we'll get to in a bit. But to be perfectly honest, for most daily drivers, it has plenty of punch. 5.8 seconds to 100 is hardly hanging about.
It's nimble and comfortable, as all the best 3 Series iterations over the ages have been. Given the small outlay in return for all the extra stuff you get over the 320 models, more luxury in tech, more safety, better performance, it really is a bit of a no-brainer. The cynic in me thinks BMW almost doesn't want you to buy the base models. Of course, there's a greener option. The 330e is a plug-in hybrid, essentially a bridge between regular hybrids and full electric cars. At $75,900 before on-roads, it's only $5,000 more than the identically equipped 330i and has a far more interesting drivetrain.
Part of the complicated drivetrain is the 320i's 2-litre petrol engine, but this car also has an electric motor which draws its power from a 10.3 kilowatt-hour battery pack. Now it has a new function where both powertrains can simultaneously deliver all of their power, which can cut the 0 to 100 km/h sprint time to just 5.9 seconds, which is pretty slick considering the extra weight added by the battery. As well as running in hybrid mode, the batteries can also solely power the car as a fully electric vehicle for a range of up to 60 kilometres, which is 50% greater than the predecessor 330e model. Once the batteries are depleted, the petrol engine can add charge, but it's much easier to simply open up this flap and plug it into the wall. A 7 kilowatt wall box will charge it up in about 2.5 hours. And for those suffering range anxiety, once the battery depletes, never fear because the petrol engine can power the car alone thanks to the 40-litre onboard fuel tank.
The theory is that you can do daily commutes to and from the office in an electric car, even sections at highway speeds, which is something a cheaper Camry Hybrid, for example, cannot manage. But you can then rely on internal combustion for trips longer than the smallish battery can power.
One thing it's worth taking into account is the claimed combined cycle fuel consumption figure of 2.2 litres every 100 k's. Now that's amazingly low, but of course, after a long drive, once the battery is mostly depleted and you're relying solely on petrol power, that figure will climb. Despite that fact, I think for a certain sort of buyer, the 330e might be a really good solution. If you only do short kilometres to and from work and you want an electric car, but you want to go on longer trips on the weekend without the worries of range anxiety, could be worth a look. So, in lieu of a full-on M3, a new generation of which will arrive soon, there's this, the $99,900 M340i xDrive. Now, I never really understood what the old 340i was trying to do. It never really struck me as a sort of softer alternative to the M3, and didn't offer all that much over and above the 330i, but this generation I totally understand. So, what does it have under the bonnet? A 3-litre inline-6, which is of course the classic BMW engine configuration. It's got twin power sequential turbocharging and outputs of 285 kilowatts and 500 newton meters of torque from just 1550 RPM, which is about ballpark with the Mercedes AMG C43.
Perhaps the biggest news though is the configuration. That xDrive badge denotes all-wheel drive, which the car has as standard. Sacrilege! The system does, however, have fully variable power distribution between the axles, and BMW claims it rarely loses its rear-wheel bias, especially in the Sport and Sport Plus modes. Further enhancing this claim is the fitment of an M Sport rear differential with fully variable rear-wheel locking.
So naturally the main benefit of all-wheel drive is all-weather stability, but it also helps acceleration. The 0 to 100 km/h sprint time in this car is just 4.4 seconds, which is only 1/10 slower than the previous generation F80 M3. That is not hanging about. Now this car also comes with a valve-controlled active exhaust system, which changes the note that the car makes depending on the drive mode you're in. And I promise you, when you mash that throttle, it sounds muscular and gruff from the outside, and it also sounds quite good from the inside as well. It doesn't have that really fake, weird, inducted sound that some BMWs of late have had. Now the 8-speed automatic gearbox from ZF is typically fast, even though it's a torque converter rather than a double clutch, and it also has these paddle shifters for if you want to do a manual takeover. So to sort of sum up the M340i, it's kind of the ultimate executive car with a hint of performance, a muscle car daily driver. The fact that you can soften the ride by pressing a button there and put yourself in a more relaxing comfort mode makes it livable. But you can also put it in sports mode or sports plus mode and have a tail-happy muscle car experience that's 90% as good as what an M3 can deliver. So if that new generation M3 is going to take over the mantle as the ultimate 3 Series, it's going to have to be an absolute belter. So, how do we sum this up? Well, as good as the 320i is, and it is very, very good, I'd probably struggle to recommend one, considering how much more you get in that 330i for a reasonable price impost. The 330e is going to be the car of choice for a very specific sort of buyer, but the fact that we don't tax CO2 here in Australia like they do in Europe mean the incentives to buy one just aren't there yet, and so it's destined to remain a niche seller. The M340i, well, I love my time in it. It really does offer all the performance you need for a daily driver, and the fact that that xDrive all-wheel drive system doesn't ruin the familiar BMW rear drive dynamics is to be commended. I do know that if the next M3 is going to be a more compelling car, it's going to have to be something of a masterpiece. But at the end of the day, it's the 330i that deserves to be the top seller. Considering its price point and what it offers, it's probably the most compelling overall luxury car package on sale today. I wouldn't hesitate for a moment to recommend one. Anyway, if you want more facts, figures and data, head over to caradvice.com and read the written component of this review for all of that. And as ever, hit us up in the comments below and let us know what you think.